Hello? This story takes place in Louisiana, a state in the southern United States bordered to the south by the Gulf of Mexico. It is a state known for its rich history and unique cultural traditions combining French, Spanish, and African influences. In southeastern Louisiana, there is a peaceful town named Slaughter, surrounded by vast, endless fields and beautiful rural landscapes. The town's economy is primarily agricultural, with most residents working in farming and livestock. Although the population is less than 900, the people here are very close-knit and harmonious, creating a warm community. Naturally, such a friendly town has attracted many people from far and wide to settle, including the Fletcher family. This wealthy family consists of 3 members. The father, Clay Fletcher, 65 years old, is an official of the Baton Rouge Civil War Round Table, a nonprofit organization dedicated to studying and discussing the American Civil War. The members of the organization include historians, scholars, enthusiasts, and researchers interested in the Civil War and related events and figures. The mother, Sheila Fletcher, 64 years old, is a town council member with an extensive social network and many acquaintances. They have a daughter named Lacy Fletcher, 36 years old. Her health is poor and she suffers from many illnesses that prevent her from working, so she stays home to recover. The family lives on Tom Avenue in the town of Slaughter in a 2-story house with a beautiful yard and pool. The entrance to the house is a cement road covered with gravel, surrounded by dense forests and a spacious lawn. The neighbors are quite far apart, providing a sense of privacy and a serene and comfortable atmosphere. This successful couple is devout and often attends the local church for weekly prayers, earning much respect from the community. Besides their daily work, they enjoy fishing, jogging, and traveling, and sometimes they stay home to take care of their daughter. However, in what seemed like an ordinary family, something unbelievable happened. On January 3rd, 2022, it was a Monday in winter in Louisiana. Compared to other areas, it was sunny, and the temperature during the day was not too low. Mr. and Mrs. Clay and Sheila were returning home early in the morning on the quiet country road of the town. The cold night sky was still enveloping them with twinkling stars far away, and the car engine roared across the silent countryside. Soon the couple arrived home on Tom Avenue. They parked the car behind the garage and walked across the lawn to the front door of the house. They unlocked the door and entered the house with a relaxed mindset. The house was dark. They touched the light switch on the wall and turned on the lights. Then they continued down the hallway, preparing to return to their bedroom to rest. As they passed the living room, they were stunned by the sight before them. They saw their daughter Lacy, partially naked, lying motionless on the sofa, appearing lifeless. Mrs. Sheila knelt beside her daughter and burst into tears. Both tried to hold back their pain and quickly called 911 for emergency assistance. 2 hours later, emergency responders arrived at the house, finding Mr. and Mrs. Clay and Sheila waiting outside the door. Seeing the emergency personnel, they anxiously expressed, "We went on a weekend trip, and our daughter Lacy stayed home. When we returned, we found her lying on the sofa and not breathing." They also mentioned, "Our daughter's health has always been very poor. She never goes out and suffers from locked-in syndrome, abbreviated as LIS. This is a rare neurological disorder that almost completely paralyzes the patient's ability to move and speak, making them unable to control their muscles and communicate with the outside world only through their eyes or nonverbal means. Although they cannot move their body, their consciousness remains clear and their thinking and cognitive functions are unaffected." They also explained that they had left their daughter alone at home when traveling before without any issues, but this time, unfortunately, something happened. When the rescue team entered the house, they sensed something strange and unusual. The air was filled with a terrible stench like a toilet. In the living room, they saw Lacy lying on a brown leather sofa. Her hips had sunk into the sofa's gap, covered in feces and urine, as if she had been sitting there for a long time. Lacy's condition looked very strange. She was only wearing a blue patterned t-shirt which was too short to cover her chest and did not fit properly. Her body was tilted to one side, her legs crossed, her right arm draped across her chest, her brown eyes wide open and her mouth slightly open, revealing her straight upper teeth. She had red spots on her body. Her face and body were covered in feces stuck to her hair and in her ears. There were also numerous mosquito bites, sores, and severely decayed skin wounds down to the bone. Maggots were crawling all over the necrotic wounds, gradually eating away at Lacy's body. The horrifying and haunting scene was unlike anything the rescue workers had ever seen, causing them to feel nauseous. They couldn't bear it, and immediately confirmed that Lacy was dead and did not need resuscitation. A few minutes later, a shrill siren broke the town's silence in the dead of night. A large police team arrived at the scene and cordoned off the entire area. Ewell Backham, a forensic examiner, also quickly arrived, and the official investigation began. Besides the sofa area where Lacy was sitting, other areas in the house were tidy and clean, but the air was filled with an unbearable stench. The sofa on which Lacy was sitting was placed against the wall. In front of the sofa was a low black table filled with items like wet wipes, talcum powder, a type of powder widely used in the United States in cosmetics and personal care products like face powder, foundation, and baby powder. There were also nasal spray, lotion, a lidded box, and a childhood photo of Lacy. These were considered the items Mr. and Mrs. Clay and Sheila used when cleaning Lacy. On the floor between the sofa and the low table were 2 old DVD boxes which appeared to be children's movies. It showed that watching movies was one of Lacy's few entertainments. Beside the sofa was a gray wardrobe containing Lacy's clothes piled up. Not far away was a simple toilet seat because Lacy could not move, so the entire sofa area was her living space. At the time of her death, she weighed only 43.5 kilograms, much less than the normal weight of an adult woman in Europe. The forensic autopsy report showed that Lacy had multiple diseases, including bacterial-infected sores, pressure sores, COVID-19, acute malnutrition from prolonged lack of food, and sepsis from osteomyelitis. All of these factors combined led to her death. The time of death was 24 to 48 hours before she was found. Lacy's stomach was filled with sofa sponge and bodily waste. Forensic Dr. Backham cast doubt on whether Lacy had locked-in syndrome, because patients with this condition cannot eat or drink on their own and depend on others for support. If she did indeed have this illness, Lacy would have endured extreme physical pain and torment before her death. When Lacy was found, her back and hips were blackened, making it impossible to see the skin. Her buttocks and thighs had large sores. The wounds mixed with feces and were enveloped by the sofa cushions. Her body was stuck to the leather-covered cushion as if it had merged with the sofa. The sofa cushion was severely deformed, the backrest was worn down, and the brown leather on the armrest and backrest was worn and discolored. Forensic experts believed Lacy had lived on the sofa for months to years. According to Lacy's medical records, she was diagnosed with severe autism, had a great fear of society, and disliked going outside. After the incident, the police interrogated the couple to understand why their daughter ended up in such a condition. The couple said, "We always took good care of our daughter, regularly cleaned her body, and provided her with food." Sheila added, "Our daughter's health worsened to the point where she refused to leave the living room and didn't want to leave the sofa, not even to use the bathroom. So we had to place towels on the sofa to absorb the feces and urine." The couple explained that the reason they didn't take Lacy to the doctor was that she refused to go. When Lacy was alive, her spirit was very good. Although moving was difficult, she wasn't entirely immobile. If she had any physical discomfort, she could move on her own. Prosecutor Sam DeQuia expressed doubts about the couple's testimony. He believed Lacy endured extreme pain before her death, mainly due to her parents' neglect or abandonment to relieve the family of the burden. Forensic Dr. Bickham later shared detailed information with a journalist about the horrific condition he witnessed. He said, "When I entered the house, the stench was horrendous, a mix of feces, waste, like the smell of sewage, septic tanks, and death. I had never smelled anything like it in my life. When I approached the body, it was basically sitting in a hole filled with feces, urine, and waste. I have handled many decomposed bodies and faced various deaths and decay, but I had never experienced anything like this in my career. I had never seen a person literally tortured and allowed to die when she could have lived." Lacy wasn't decomposed, she had rotted within her body in that hole, in that sewer, on that couch. "This is one of the most disgusting and horrifying crimes I have ever encountered." He added, "After Lacy's autopsy, I struggled for a week and almost couldn't eat or drink. Lacy's case is the worst form of medical neglect I have ever seen. I don't know how to describe it any differently. She died as a result of at least a decade of medical neglect." Bickham recalled the scene when he first arrived at the crime scene. "I noticed the expressions on her parents' faces. At that time, Clay was completely indifferent throughout the process and seemed emotionless, as if the deceased was not his daughter. Sheila bowed her head between her knees, showing a bit of sadness and shedding a few meaningless tears. My instincts told me everything was abnormal, completely different from the relatives' moods in other homicide cases I had encountered. There was no evidence that Lacy was being fed properly except for a small bag of candy nearby. In fact, her stomach contained yellow foam from the sofa and feces. Lacy's father worked for a non-profit organization, and her mother was also a member of the town council. The couple had extensive connections and interacted with people from all walks of life. They had the financial means to treat and rehabilitate mental health issues and could have hired personal care for their daughter if they truly wanted to. However, they believed their daughter's immobility was due to psychological factors. They assumed she didn't want to leave the sofa and naturally thought she only had psychological issues and was physically healthy. After the incident, the town sheriff, Jeffrey Travis, made a statement. "I have been the sheriff here for 6 years and I've witnessed many things, but this is the worst case I've ever encountered." Other investigators also said they couldn't sleep or eat after investigating the case due to the psychological trauma from its horrific nature. Lacy was born in 1986 in Louisiana, and at the time of her death, she was 36 years old. After graduating from high school, she always stayed home with her parents and disliked going outside. In 1995, her family moved to the small town of Slaughter and settled in a 2-story house on Tom Avenue. When they moved, Lacy was only 9 years old, very active and lovable, and soon made friends with the local children. In 1997, as a teenager, Lacy attended a church high school. At that time, she was healthy, liked sports, and joined the school's volleyball team. In the eyes of her classmates, she was a cute and kind girl. However, it was unclear when her friends began noticing changes in Lacy. Lacy seemed uninterested in the emotions and teenage topics that her peers cared about. Her interests remained the same as in childhood, as she still liked playing with Disney dolls. Lacy gradually realized she was different from her peers, becoming more withdrawn, not initiating communication and developing feelings of inferiority and anxiety. The last time her friends saw Lacy was in her 3rd year of high school in the class photo. In that picture, Lacy stood with a radiant face among her friends, and anyone looking at it would think she was a normal, happy girl. However, this was not the case because after taking the graduation photo, she never returned to school. After leaving school, Lacy always stayed home and was homeschooled by her parents. Her parents declared that their daughter was diagnosed by a doctor with autism known as Asperger's syndrome. In 2021, this condition was classified by the World Health Organization as part of the autism spectrum disorder, ASD. People with this condition have poor communication and social interaction skills, exhibit isolation, have few friends, and display narrow interests and repetitive behaviors. However, this condition does not show significant abnormalities in language and intellectual development. Lacy gradually disappeared from public view and was rarely seen. Her life revolved around seeing a psychologist and staying home. According to her medical records, her last medical checkup was in 2001 when she was 16 years old. Her mental and physical state was not updated, and since then, Lacy never visited the hospital and rarely left the house. It wasn't until the early morning of January 3rd, 2022, that the entire incident drew public attention, officially opening the most bizarre, cruel, and inexplicable case in the town. After the incident, people were very angry and outraged by the couple's behavior. Many wondered why their daughter, who had been ill for many years, did not receive effective treatment, causing her condition to worsen severely. People believed that the couple's neglect led to this tragic end. John Potts, a colleague of Lacy's father, said the colleagues in the organization respected the couple, but no one knew they had a daughter. The couple never mentioned her. It wasn't until the incident that I learned about it. Potts believed that they had completely failed in their parental duties and showed no concern for their daughter. He said, "I don't understand how they could let their daughter die in such pain." Robert Blades, a neighbor living near Lacy, stated that Lacy was a friendly and obedient child. She enjoyed playing with other children in the neighborhood until she was about 14 years old. Her parents did not allow her to go out and play alone freely. The last time he saw Lacy was in 2001 when she was exercising outdoors, her skin pale and looking very thin. According to the neighbor's son, Lacy was very intelligent but somewhat different. She seemed more interested in things meant for younger children compared to her actual age. While everyone else was into racing and idolizing stars, she remained immersed in childish games and couldn't break away from them. I had interacted with Lacy for a short time, but the experience wasn't good. When Lacy was 18 years old, her personality became more introverted, yet she wanted to find friends to play with, constantly conflicted with herself. Robert added that 5 years before the incident, in 2017, he had asked Lacy's father about her whereabouts because he hadn't seen Lacy for many years. He always thought Lacy had moved away, but her father replied, "Oh no, she's still here, very healthy." Clay then changed the subject and didn't want to talk about his daughter. Robert understood and didn't ask further, assuming that Lacy had disappeared from the town. According to Lacy's parents, this was entirely her voluntary choice, and no one forced her to do so. It is known that 12 years before the incident, in 2010, the couple went to the hospital to consult a doctor about their daughter's condition. They told the doctor that their daughter's condition was worsening, becoming very withdrawn, and always staying on the sofa without wanting to get down. They had tried various ways to persuade her, but nothing worked. After listening, the doctor advised the couple to take their daughter to the hospital for inpatient treatment, but for some reason they did not follow through. Based on some clues, it can be known that before she died, Lacy had to endure 12 years of pain on the fateful sofa in the living room. After the case, District Attorney Sam Tequila prepared to prosecute the couple on charges of second-degree murder. In the United States, second-degree murder is a criminal offense involving intentionally causing the death of another person without premeditation. Compared to first-degree murder, second-degree murder usually lacks clear intent and malice. Second-degree murder often includes killings without premeditation, intentionally causing severe injury leading to death. Depending on state law, sentencing for second-degree murder varies but generally carries lighter penalties compared to first-degree murder. The prosecution provided sufficient evidence, and the grand jury would review and decide whether to officially prosecute the case. At the hearing, jurors witnessed images of Lacy lying on the sofa, her body covered in waste, ulcers from rotting flesh, and exposed bones. The images and evidence in the case made many jurors extremely uncomfortable and disturbed. Ultimately, the grand jury decided to indict the couple on second-degree murder charges. The bail was set at $300,000. After 36 hours, the couple posted bail and were temporarily released while awaiting the final trial. After being released, both husband and wife resigned from their jobs. The sudden passing of their daughter plunged them into sorrow and regret. What once were happy times have now turned into infinite remorse. They refused to give interviews to the media, and their lawyer issued a statement on their behalf asserting that they did not want to evoke more pain from the loss of their daughter as they had already suffered enough. The trial was initially scheduled for February 6, 2023, but was later postponed to June 19, 2023. During this period, District Judge Catherine Jones dismissed the second-degree murder charges against the couple at a hearing on May 30th. However, District Attorney Tequila continued to pursue plans to prosecute them under a new charge. He wanted Lacy's parents to face life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. To achieve this, he proposed the maximum manslaughter sentence of 40 years in prison. On February 6, 2024, Lacy's parents received a plea deal for the lesser charge of manslaughter, facing a maximum sentence of 40 years in prison. If convicted of second-degree murder, they would face a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole. Pleading guilty to manslaughter would give them a chance for parole after 40 years, and by then, if still alive, they would be over 100 years old. Their sentencing was set for March 20th, 2024. There are many types of unconditional love that parents can have for their children, but in this case, Lacy was pitiful, as that love turned into a tragedy that consumed her both physically and mentally. Ultimately, leaving this terrible reality was the only release that allowed her to rest peacefully in the afterlife. The story takes place in the city of Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, a densely populated city with many famous tourist attractions such as the Petronas, Twin Towers, Thian Hau Temple, Salama Bridge, and the River of Life. The main character of the case is a girl named Hong May Fung, born in 1978 in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. At the time of the incident, May Fung was only 9 years old and was a third-grade student at Chownan Primary School. Her family lives on Jalan Ipoh in the northern part of Kuala Lumpur in a 2-story house with 8 members, and May Fung is the second oldest child. Her family has a bak kut teh shop on the first floor, a traditional Malaysian dish made from pork ribs simmered in a special broth, which is very popular with Malaysian people. One morning when May Feng and her older brother Yao Tian were leaving the house to buy breakfast for the whole family, Yao Tian had to run back home to use the restroom, leaving May Feng waiting alone. During that time, an evil hand reached out and touched the little girl, causing great sorrow for all who heard about it. So what happened that day? Let's delve deeper into the story. On Sunday, April 12th, 1987, it was a humid and hot day. Around 8:30 a.m., the Fung family was preparing to open their shop. May Feng's father, Hong Cheng Fu, age 37, was getting things ready to welcome customers. Her mother, Yang Yu Qing, age 38, was also helping the family. Since the whole family had not yet eaten breakfast, Mrs. Qing took some money and asked her eldest son, Yao Tian, to take his sister, May Feng, to a nearby shop to buy breakfast for the family. At that time, Yao Tian and May Feng left home happily, but when they arrived at the bakery, the shop was not open. However, the two of them did not want to return empty-handed, and moreover, their family still did not have anything for breakfast, so they decided to go to a nearby market. On the way, they passed through a road called Jalan Tun Razak, and Yao Tian's brother suddenly felt uncomfortable in his stomach, so he hurried back home to use the restroom. He told May Feng to wait for him at the same spot, but about 10 minutes later, when Yao Tian came back, May Feng was no longer there. He searched and shouted her name but received no response. Feeling worried, Yao Tian hurried back home to tell his parents. After hearing Yao Tian's account, the couple immediately abandoned their work and rushed to the location to search for their daughter. However, the surrounding area was mainly abandoned houses and there were not many people passing by. They asked everyone around, but no one had seen the girl. The family also searched every nook and cranny, but could not find May Feng anywhere. Normally, May Feng was very well behaved and would inform her parents if she went anywhere, or at least tell her brother, but this time unless she was kidnapped by someone. This made May Feng's parents even more worried, but fortunately they had a kind neighbor who joined in the search for the girl. They continued searching for more than 2 hours but still had no reliable results. As time passed, people felt that May Feng might have been kidnapped by someone and the chance of finding her alive was very low, but May Feng's parents were determined not to give up. They continued to search more widely on the nearby streets and some deserted places. That afternoon, they went to an abandoned 3-story commercial house near May Feng's house and a gas station. The mother opened the door and stepped in while the father followed behind. Before them was a long hallway, at the end of which was a staircase leading up to the 2nd and 3rd floors of the house. When the mother pushed open the door next to the staircase, a horrifying sight greeted her, nearly causing her to faint. Before them lay May Feng on the floor, her body completely unclothed with an electrical cord tightly wrapped around her neck and her body covered in signs of violation. The most terrible thing was a 90 centimeters long wooden plank that had been driven straight through her heart. This scene caused May Feng's parents immense anguish. They quickly carried their daughter to the nearest hospital, but sadly it was too late. May Feng's passing left the entire family in deep sorrow and pain. Her parents immediately reported the incident to the Kuala Lumpur police, hoping they would find the cruel perpetrator who had committed this horrific act. After receiving the report, the police quickly arrived at the scene and launched a formal investigation. The crime scene was a dilapidated environment with many empty rooms containing only a few pieces of wood, electrical wires, and abandoned construction materials on the ground. The empty houses in this area were often secret hideouts for drug addicts. Due to the damaged crime scene, the only thing the police were able to recover were a few blood-stained footprints. After comparison, the police found that these matched the footprints of May Feng's parents and some curious bystanders who had come to the scene. However, these people were eliminated as suspects. The police also questioned the employees at the nearby gas station but did not obtain any useful leads. They also interviewed the local residents and people who had passed by the route from May Feng's house to the crime scene, but still could not find any helpful clues. If this was not an accident, it is very possible that someone deliberately committed this act to take revenge on May Feng's family, as they were well known in the neighborhood for their delicious food business that had many regular customers. This may have sparked jealousy in some competitors, leading them to kidnap and murder May Feng as retaliation. However, after the investigation, the police could not find any suspects. On the 2nd day after the incident, the autopsy report was released and the results showed that May Feng was attacked on the neck, chest, and other body parts while still alive. All of these traces left bite marks indicating that May Feng was assaulted by at least 8 people. At the time, forensic science and technology were not yet developed, so it was impossible to extract the perpetrator's DNA from the victim's body. And the crime scene and the lack of surveillance cameras and witnesses made the case extremely difficult to solve. News of the incident quickly spread everywhere, making the local people extremely outraged by the brutality of the perpetrator. People started to investigate the people around them, hoping to provide useful clues to the police, and everyone wanted to quickly find the infamous perpetrator. Based on some clues, the police speculated that the perpetrator was a man who could speak Tamil, a language common in South India, Northeast Sri Lanka, and South Asian countries like Singapore. After the investigation, the police arrested 3 suspects, all of whom had a criminal record, including one who was fluent in Tamil. However, after comparing the bite marks of the 3 suspects with the bite marks left on the victim's body, the results did not match, so the 3 suspects were released due to lack of evidence. Since then, the investigation has stalled, and the police have faced unprecedented pressure. In order to solve the case, they even offered a 10,000 ringgit reward for anyone who could provide useful clues. About 100 people participated in a protest calling on the police to quickly resolve the case, and demanding that the authorities strengthen the management of street safety. Some people even launched a charity sale to raise the reward from 10,000 to 20,000 ringgit, and they even paid a high price to invite a sorcerer to the crime scene, in the hope of being able to summon the perpetrator. After the heartbreaking incident, the parents of May Fung did not want to hastily bury her, but rather wanted to wait until the police caught the perpetrator so that their daughter could be laid to rest properly. Only then would they make plans for May Fung's burial. However, as time passed, the police were still unable to crack the case, and May Fung's body began to show signs of decomposition, forcing her parents to decide to bury her as soon as possible before the situation worsened. Before proceeding with the burial, May Fung's parents wanted to find a way to avenge their daughter. They thought that if she was buried in a red outfit, her resentment would be even deeper. At that time, May Fung's soul could become a ghost and seek revenge on those who had killed her, but the elders in the family did not approve of this plan. They believed that if she was buried in a red outfit, May Fung's soul would not be able to reincarnate, but would only be able to wander the earthly realm until it completely dissipated. After careful consideration, May Fung's parents gave up the idea of burying her in a red outfit. In May 1987, a month after the incident, the family buried May Fung according to custom. Afterwards, a local newspaper received an anonymous letter that led to a new twist in the investigation. In the letter, the writer claimed to be the perpetrator and confessed to killing May Fung. Furthermore, he revealed that he had been present at the crime scene on the day of the incident, blending in with the crowd and observing the investigation. At the time, he had wanted to turn himself in but ultimately lacked the courage to do so. He admitted to being mentally ill and unable to control himself, and felt immense regret and guilt after committing the heinous act. At the end of the letter, the writer promised that if the public forgave him, he would turn himself in after some time. Not long after, the newspaper received a second anonymous letter, also handwritten and with a similar style to the previous one. In this second letter, the writer claimed that he was the true perpetrator of the crime and that the bite marks on the victim's body were left by him. The police then concluded that they had been investigating the wrong person. Sometime later, the newspaper received a third letter in which the writer demanded that the Kuala Lumpur police prepare 300,000 ringgit to relocate him. He promised that if he received this money, he would turn himself in, but if not, the case would never be solved. And he even threatened that if he did not get the money, he would continue to commit other crimes and more children would meet the same fate as May Fung. Everyone was outraged by the arrogant and threatening actions of the letter writer, and they swore they would find the person who had written these letters and punish him whether he was the actual perpetrator or not. Afterwards, the letter writer probably became frightened by the public's outrage, so he switched to writing the letters in English and sending them to some local newspapers. In the letter, he explained that the previous letters were all written under coercion for malicious purposes. He acted this way because he was unhappy with the local newspaper's continual exaggeration of the case. He hoped that people could give him a chance to reform himself and not seek further, as the letters did not leave any clues. After the investigation, the police also did not get any additional results, and the letter writer also kept his promise not to send any new letters to the newspaper. With no other choice, the case gradually reached a deadlock, and the police continued to investigate but did not obtain any valuable clues. The mood of the local people also changed from the initial anger to fear of the hidden murderer in the crowd. During that time, everyone was very frightened to let their children go out alone, and after a long time, the case was gradually forgotten. By 2009, 22 years after the incident occurred, the perpetrator had still not been arrested and remained at large, although someone had brought up the case again. Those involved had been interviewed again. The May Fung family initially lived on Ipoh Street, but had moved elsewhere a few years earlier, and were still running a bak kut teh shop. Most of the people living on this street still remembered the tragic incident of the little girl May Fung. Whenever they thought about it, they were overwhelmed with outrage and regret that they could not restore justice for the girl, even though she was not their own child. Everyone had witnessed her growing up, and this heartbreaking event had become a thorn in their side. The police investigators at the time also affirmed that the crime scene investigation was very important for solving the case, but many curious citizens had entered and examined the scene, damaging important evidence before the police arrived. Based on the modus operandi, psychologists believed the perpetrator might have acted out of abnormal psychology or revenge, but after many years of investigation, the culprit remained a mystery. After May Fung's disappearance, her brother Yao Tian always blamed himself and lived in unbearable grief. He could not accept the loss of his beloved sister, and 12 years later, he passed away at the age of 22 due to liver disease. The mother cried daily, unable to overcome the pain of losing her child. Although the police and kind-hearted citizens had done their utmost to find the perpetrator, there were still no leads to this day. The father did not blame anyone, but instead organized international charity sales to raise funds and offer rewards for any useful information. However, he did not get any results and later donated the entire sum to schools. 30 years have passed, but all that remains is the image of May Fung at the age of 9 and the unending grief of the May Fung family. They still hope that the perpetrator will turn himself in, or that there will be important clues to solve this case. What are your thoughts on this case today? Please comment below the description so that we can discuss together, and if you find it interesting, don't hesitate to leave a like and subscribe to our channel to support us. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.